All right, now the discussion today would be centered on the dispute over high school fees between the Old Boys Association, called the Fisher Education Development Trust, and of course the parents whose children are enrolled in that particular institution, a college of education in Umuahia, Abia State to be precise. We'll be looking at a whole lot of issues on the discussion today. First, we'll be looking at the issue of how has it come to being where a government-owned institution is now being run by private individuals as board of trustees. At what point do they have the liberty to increase tuition fee to the tune of 2 million naira? And of course, we'll be looking at, do they have that permission, as it were, to demolish structures owned by government and rebuild new ones, so much so that they take full control of the affairs of the institution? These are some of the issues that we'll be looking at this morning. All right, now my question to you, Mr. Hassan. Of course, you know that it is common knowledge before now that missionaries were in charge of institutions of education, maybe at high school level or tertiary level. And of course, as time went by, government started taking ownership of this institution. But the one that is more worrisome is the fact that some persons who graduated from these various institutions now decide to form an association called Old Boys Association to now start taking affairs or control of the day-to-day runnings of the school, like building, demolishing, and all of that. What's your take on this particular trend?
Well, I think I'd like to start by first saying that what we are discussing today is actually very sad. And interestingly, it doesn't pertain to the institution in Umuahia alone. It's actually something that represents the fate of many of the very, very good institutions that we had in colonial Africa, in colonial Nigeria. Institutions that produced very prominent individuals. I mean, the government college, Umuahia, that you're talking about now, is a school that, when you're talking of some of the literary icons, some of the very prominent people in Nigeria's public and civil services, this is a college, this is a secondary school that produced them. It's usually called the Eton of the East, and that's because it's a secondary school that was modeled after a similar institution in Britain. And the whole idea of that school was to produce some of the best minds in the country. It's an institution that produced the likes of Chukwuemeka Ike, the likes of Ken Saro-Wiwa. And I think that, forgotten his name now, the man who wrote Nigeria was a country or something like that. I can't recall his name now. Chinua Achebe. Is equally a product of the government college, Umuahia. So this is an important institution that ordinarily, if we are talking today, we should be talking about how much the government has added to that institution, how much progress it has continued to make. But what we are talking about now is an institution that is in a state of decline. And the current scandal is an indication of how much government abdication of its responsibility has led to even a further deterioration of the value of that school. Because we should not be talking about the role of old boys associations, charging fees or building, school, taking out the construction of school buildings or demolition and co, where the government was playing its role. It's not just illegal, it's immoral, to have, because the role of alumni association are to carry forward the value of an institution and to protect its legacy. That's the role of an alumni association. Alumni associations are also like ethnic associations and all of that. They are to protect and carry forward the value and culture of a society or a group. they are not a government in that sense. But everywhere you go to now, even in tertiary institutions, public tertiary institutions, you have alumni associations playing more than their real role, to the extent that the government of the day have abdicated their responsibility. That is what is behind this very sad tale we're talking about.
All right, now you have established a background that this is very worrisome and illegal, seeing Old Boys Association coming up to take full control of the institution itself. Now, before this time, we used to see some of them taking up roles of rebuilding the walls of the school, sometimes demolishing it completely and rebuilding new ones. But the one that is more worrisome is the fact that they now wake up one morning and decide to increase the tuition fee to the tune of 2 million naira, which never sat well with parents whose children are in those schools. And even some members are even revolting that they are not comfortable, considering the fact that the economy is right now is not smiling. They had to reduce it when they realized that enrollment of students has dropped significantly to the tune of 1,150,000, a difference of 850,000. But where is the government's role or attention to this, especially the governor of that state, Alex Oti, and of course the State House of Assembly?
It's not just Alex Oti. It's an indictment on all of the government you have had in that state over the past decades. What we are talking about right now, because if you look at the East, for instance, all of the states in the East are some of, they have some of the worst indices when it comes to educational outcomes. I can't remember all of the figures at my fingertips now, but I do know that when you are talking about educational outcomes in this country in terms of enrollment, in terms of retention, in terms of graduation, in terms of all other metrics, the East is really not doing fine. And that is a function of the consistent underfunding of public education in the East. And this story about the government college Umaya is a clear indication of that. And because it is the application of the government responsibility that led to the situation where the Alumni Association now had to put forward a trust foundation in order to take on the administration of the school, as well as mobilization of resources for capital projects and maintenance and payment of teachers and all of that in the school, if the government was playing its role. And that's why I find what the government is trying to do now through the State Assembly, not just ironic, but very, very hypocritical. Yes, because what you should expect a government that is serious to be saying is not just to oppose the fee, but to say that now we recognize that we have caused, or previous regimes have caused this problem by underfunding the school. Now we want to take off the funding. We are asking that the school fees either be reduced or scrapped. But right now we are asking the Trust Foundation, to take leave of the institution. Now government will take up its responsibility. But that is not what we are hearing. So now it looks as if you are not ready to play your role, and now, but then you are intervening, but without necessarily providing the solution. So that what we have to say, and what I think I have to stress this morning, is that unless OT, if truly the Labour Party is a party that stands for the interests of the working class and the poor, this situation represents an important opportunity, for the government to demonstrate that in practice. And that would be by immediately, taking over the running of the school and providing the adequate resources that is needed to begin to rehabilitate the school and ensure that there's quality, even when the fee of the school will be at a level that will be affordable to the children, of the poor. That is very significant, because that is the only way to begin to reverse the brain drain and the very, very terrible educational outcomes in the East. That school used to be like the go-to school, not just in the Eastern region back then, but in the whole of West Africa, including Southern Cameroon. Saw government college Umaya, somewhere you just have to go to, and the enrollment standard was quite very high. You couldn't just, it was like the government college in Ibadan at that time. which had very high standards because it was for high-flying students. But look at what it is today.
Okay, you just talked about quality, and I am very, very interested in that. We know that there has been talks that the quality of education in Nigeria has dropped. And if you look at the federal level, fuel subsidy was removed, and the pump price has increased. And all, according to the government, is in a bid to reshape, reposition the economy and give Nigerians a better standard of living, if only we can continue to endure. So are we to say this is also part of the strategy to ensure that the school gets and return back its glory? Don't you think?
I don't think so, because we have seen this play out severally in different situations over and over again. And what we see is that commercialization, privatization, market-based approach, to provision of what should be social amenities or public utilities, they don't ever lead to the kind of progress you just talked about. Usually what they lead to, the situation where access for the mass majority is completely, unavailable, while, for the most part, those amenities will just be for a few. And then, in the Nigerian situation, you have also seen, the reality that the mere fact that people have to pay more for something does not automatically, guarantee, quality. And I'll give you an example. Look at the bandit form of electricity provision we have now. And the justification for it, is that if you pay more, then, we can guarantee supply. But Band A, people on the Band A, the people who complain the most today, that's because they have seen that it doesn't work. We have to go back to what used to work in this country. And I think that the government college, Umaya, provides for all of us an example of what used to work. The likes of Kensaro Wiwa, Chinua Achebe and co. If you have read Chinua Achebe, his life history, then you will see just how much privatization, how much damage it has done to different generations of Nigerians. We are never, to recover from what has been done to us over the past 40 years, will possibly take hundreds of years, the kind of damage that has been done. Because when you read Chinua Achebe's life history and how he got into government college, how he came out, and then he had about 5 jobs waiting for him and all of that. And this was somebody was a child of a nobody. His parents were poor, they were peasants. They could never, in the current condition of Nigeria, ever have aspired to have their child in an institution like that. Today, they will never. Yesterday I read about how, British schools now, some of the high-flying, high-paying British schools are now planning to establish in Nigeria. And they'll be charging as much as $15,000.
Because there's money here.
Because there's money here. Federal government college, UMA here, was a replication of the Eton College in Britain. The same standard, the same syllabus, the same quality. It was a replication of it in British West Africa. So it meant that the children, it was established in 1999, so it meant that the children of African peasants, Nigerian peasants who went to those schools were receiving the same education as anybody in England. You saw that the product of those schools, they were high flying. So because why I'm saying that is that today now the formula is that for us, for parents to be able to have ensure that their children have education, international standard education, they have to buy lands or steal or loot resources. But at a time in this country, in the 1930s, children of nobody were having the same education without having to.
All right.
So why can't we have that again? Because don't forget, Nigeria now has more resources than it ever had back then. So it is not true that that is the only part.
More resources, more challenges.
We don't have more challenges. Truly, we do not.
Let's not get into that.
We do not have more challenges. We can go back into the history. Post-independent regimes and government in Africa had more challenges than today. Most of the challenges that we face today in Africa are self-induced challenges. But back then, go and read Awolowo. They were going to villages to be begging parents about the value of education. You don't have to beg anybody today about the value of education. They spend possibly hundreds of thousands campaigning even before they were laying the schools to convince parents. And if you go and meet many of our older generation, our parents and they will tell you that most of the children that even went to school, my own mom was telling me the story a few days ago, were children who were seen to be unfit for manual farm labor. So it's like, just give this one to Awolowo because it's useless in the farm. That was how many people got educated. So, but we don't face the same challenges today. The challenges we face now are self-induced. Challenges caused by failed leadership, challenges caused by corruption, challenges caused by, artificial divisions that politicians are creating and all of that. If you resolve all of those things, and we have a common vision of what we want to achieve, and we have a common idea of how we want to utilize our resources to achieve it, you'll be shocked at how much we can do within a few years.
Let's also address this issue of tenureship within the board. You are an educationist and of course a socialist. You understand that education should be a social welfare program against the background of what we have today, it has been highly commercialized and of course propagated by quote and unquote the student loan program. Now back to the issue. The issue of tenureship elongation. Based on the information available, some members have elapsed their tenureship base and refuse to step down. Something tells that it is for profitable end, that is making them, step down when they are supposed not to.
And a follow-up, as you're answering this one, what was the way forward? What is that practical and decisive step that the Abia state government should take to ensure that this does not continue?
Yeah, thank you. Obviously, once money becomes a factor anywhere, you begin to have all these kind of conflicts and dispute over tenure and all of that. Because if the trust foundation was in what modeled after what we know foundations to be about, then it should be non-profit, and then perhaps it should have certain values that will be of selfless service rather than, I don't want to accuse anybody of corruption, but I do think that when people fight over tenure, then you realize that selflessness is no more the case. Usually there is something that is of benefit in that kind of environment that now makes people staying longer than expected to be a do or die affair. But we would not have all of this really, where government, saw its responsibility as something very crucial, very important. Because when that trust foundation came into being, I can't remember what year, maybe 1997, I can't remember, I don't have the dates in my head right now. But when the trust foundation came into being, it followed a period of a decline in the secondary school. Structures were decrepit, enrollment was down, teachers were being hold for years and all of that. So what that means is that for a long period, the state just completely ignored the school. That was what led to the Trust Foundation coming in. And when the Trust Foundation came in, there was some improvement. But improvement in what direction? Because if people have to be paying 1 point something million for secondary school education, then how much would they pay when they go into the university? And this is in a state which, when you are talking about socioeconomic indices, is also at some of the lowest levels. We have to say that government college in Nigeria is a public institution. And so far as a public institution, having a private body manage a public institution is something that is illogical, is illegal, cannot be allowed. A government institution by law ought to be run publicly by those who are appointed by government to run it. Public-private partnership, the process of a trust which is not appointed by anybody, running a public institution is wrong, is illegal, and on that basis, the government have to step in. And in stepping in, it means that first and foremost, we need even an audit of the trust foundation itself. We need an audit of what it has done over the past few years in order to identify very clearly how much money, because when you say a foundation, that means the foundation is also raising money from somewhere. So how much money has been raised on behalf of the institution, how much has been spent, are there any cases of corruption and co. Then the government also, in doing that, also have to take up the funding of the institution, ensuring that what the trust foundation had to come in to do, that the government now takes it on by itself. And it's possible. Abia State, despite everything, has the resources, to be able to do this. What we just need is the political will and the interest.
Well, you've said it all, and the quality of education. We've been discussing the scandal in Abia State where a trust fund has taken over the government school, and there's a saga between Old Boys Association and the Western. But we've heard from our guest, and he has said it all. The government needs to take decisive steps to ensure that this matter does not fester. And this is where we draw the curtain on this segment of This Morning on ITV from the Lagos Network Studio. And we'll say stay tuned for the continuation of the program as we hand it over back to Billy.